Shalom YouTubes, Stephen Daniel here with Work Out Your Faith. I wanted to take some time and tell the English-speaking world about the situation in Venezuela right now. You may have seen a little bit on the news that they had a presidential election and that there is suspicion of fraud. But you probably haven't seen any information about the depth of the fraud and what's going on there. You may have seen some violence in the streets, some protests, and some riots. But I wanted to take some time and explain how their election process works. And as I watched the election take place and the results and how it played out, I haven't seen anything for the English-speaking world explaining all of that. So a little background on the country first is Venezuela used to be a very rich and successful country. And in 1998, they had a political shift where they had a fair election and voted in Hugo Chavez. He didn't advertise himself as a communist leader at the time, but he did slowly start introducing communism. And what he did with that is he started to seize control of private businesses. He said instead of the government, or instead of the private people owning the business, the government now owned this business. He came in with people with guns, military or police, and forced out many workers. This includes a lot of the oil industry in the country. Chevron and Shell were had very large operations in the country at the time. He came in and forced everyone out and seized control of it for the government, and it all has basically slowly gone to hell. And he also took control of the public utilities, infrastructure, water, natural gas, electricity. Basically, what's been going on there is the communist government has said, okay, the people don't have to pay for electricity or water. We're going to provide that for the people. And at the same time, the government is saying, well, we need to save a little bit of money, so we're going to turn off the electricity for a few hours in this neighborhood. Well, we need to save a little money, so we're going to turn off the water. And so there are periodic blackouts every day. And it's become quite unlivable for many of the people. They don't have access to running water and to steady electricity because the government keeps shutting it off, or pipes break and the government doesn't bother to fix them. So it's become unlivable, and almost 8 million people have fled the country in the past 26 years. And it's a population of only 30 million people or so to begin with. So a lot have left and are continuing to leave. So Hugo Chavez died and was then replaced by Nicolas Maduro in 2013. Nicolas Maduro was someone who he had taken under his wing and trained him up, mentored him, and basically was a mini version of Hugo Chavez. Um, and along with Maduro was another man named, oh, I can't remember his name. But currently he is the uh, equivalent of the Speaker of the House in Venezuela. Um, so, as the country has degraded, other candidates have risen up saying, we need to fix this. We need to elect someone else and get out of this hole that we keep digging deeper and deeper, digging ourselves into. And they've ran for president, and usually what has happened is they've either been killed or intimidated or bribed and forced to leave, or somehow or other been disqualified. Um, there's also been electoral fraud in the past. And so this election, we have Maria Corina, who's come up. She was basically like a senator in 2011, and she served for 3 years there. And she has always spoken out for freedom in the country, even against Hugo Chavez during his rule when she was a senator. She stood up and said, "You've been talking forever, and you know the things you're saying are not what we have in this country. This country is degrading. You're saying it's all great, but it's not." Um, she was eventually kicked out of being Senate, and she was trying to run for president, and she was disqualified. Um, because she was disqualified, she was actually given the option to leave the country and never come back. But she chose not to do that. She decided to stay and face the persecution and fight for the freedom of the country. Because she was disqualified as a candidate, she was able to find a proxy candidate, essentially, Edmundo Gonzalez. So he is running. His name is the one on the ballot, even though she's the one who's really going to be the president. Um, so they will be partnered running the country. During her campaign, um, she has faced immense persecution. She has faced, um, for example, when she's in her, traveling around the country, if she stops at a gas station to buy gas, she will buy gas and leave, and um, Maduro will send people to the gas station to shut it down. They will seize the business from the owner. Say, okay, you supported her, so we're shutting you down. We're seizing your business now. She will stay at a hotel, and Maduro will send people and say, oh, you supported her, so we're seizing your business. We're shutting you down. And this has been following her everywhere she goes, with an attempt to remove support from her by making it impossible for the people to support her because they will lose their livelihood. Despite all this, she has gained tremendous support from the people, and she has endured. Even during part of her candidacy, just a few weeks ago, she was staying somewhere overnight, and when she got up in the morning, the cars had been vandalized. Looks like people had beaten them in with hammers or bats. They had painted all over the car. They had cut the brake lines, sabotaged them, and made them undrivable. these types of things have been following her in her candidacy to try and discourage her and to keep her from campaigning. Um, and yet she has endured. Um, so now let's talk about the way the election works in Venezuela is they have local voting polls at local schools, and wherever the registered voters live, they have an assigned poll to go to at their local school. They can't go to the one the next neighborhood over. They have to go to the one they are assigned to. Um, and this year there were 10 million votes, or over 10 million votes, that were submitted inside the country. Um, this is a record for the most amount of votes ever in the country. Um, and there was outstanding support from Reina Corina. Um, of the nearly 8 million Venezuelans who are living abroad, many of them were barred from exercising their rights to vote. And the way that happened is um, they they were able to go to a location in whatever country they were in to vote, but they had to show their national ID, and it had to be valid. Many of them, their national ID is expired because they can't get it renewed. They are abroad, and the system is all messed up to renew their ID anyways. So passport was not accepted as a form of ID. It had to be their national ID, and they had to have legal status in the country where they were residing. So of this nearly 8 million people, only 69,000 were actually able to vote. Um, so what could have been a much larger turnout of voters who wanted to see freedom was was greatly reduced by eliminating the people abroad who wanted to vote. Um, Another thing that happened to prevent the people who wanted to vote for Maria Corina is some of the school overseers locked the doors while there were people lined up outside to come vote starting at 6 a.m. They were supposed to open the doors at 6 a.m. to let people in to vote, but some of them left the doors locked. They wouldn't allow the people in. Um, they just had to wait outside. And while they were outside, they were persecuted, some of them, by a group called the Colectivos, who are sent by Maduro to cause trouble. They're basically guns for hire that will take away liability from Maduro for persecuting people, for attacking people, because they are not officials, they are not police, they are not army, they are just people with motorcycles and guns who are willing to attack others for him. Maybe he pays them, most likely he pays them, and they're willing to do it. Um, so some of the voting polls locked out the voters. In other voting polls I saw, in at least one of them, the people went in there and some of them went into a back room and they found boxes and boxes of false ballots in support of Maduro. Um, it was 6 a.m. The poll had just opened. They said, how can it be you already have boxes full of votes for Maduro? And they went to the overseer of that poll and kicked them out, basically. Um, Threw them out in the street because of the corruption. And the way that the polling works there it's a computerized system. You use your fingerprint to register that you're voting, and you then enter your vote, and it goes into a computer, and the computer will spit out a receipt that says, okay, this was your choice. Um, and what has happened in the past is those votes have been stolen, or false votes have been added. And so Maria Corina had a plan, and she told voters, after you vote, don't just vote and go home. Stay there at the poll and wait for them to announce the results of that local poll, because they will add it up there by the end of the day, which I think at 7 p.m. is when the poll closes. They will add it up and they will announce it. Use your phone to record what they announce at the local poll. Post it on social media, post it online, so that there is proof. And that's what many of them did. And we saw locally that in every poll there was outstanding support for Maria Corina. Um, I saw partway through the day they had added up some of them, and they were already at Maduro had only 10 to 15% of the support of the people, and Maria Corina had 70% or more. Um, so the voting ended at 7 p.m. And then what needs to happen is the overseers take their final count from each poll, and they go to the CNE, which is the centralized count in Caracas, in the capital. And they take their count there, and they added up the tally for the whole nation, um, to say, okay, this is what the total results are countrywide. Um, so what happened is, when they went there to the CNE building to add it all up, they were locked out of the building for many hours. Um, Instead of getting there at 8 p.m. and counting up the votes and making an announcement, they were locked out of the building and attacked by colectivos, and the announcement wasn't eventually made until after midnight. And meanwhile, people were standing outside the building. Voters were standing outside the buildings and outside their local polls, and the overseers of the local polls were standing outside the CNE building trying to get in. And colectivos were coming and attacking people and threatening them and intimidating them to get them to go home. But the people did not go home. They persevered. Some of the colectivos were trying to steal the boxes that contained the votes from the overseers to go destroy them. And the people were not having it. They were determined to win this election for their freedom. Eventually, the CNE committee did come out and make an announcement. It was after midnight. And meanwhile, during that waiting period, Maduro was speaking with Maria Corina, and he had offered her money to step down. He had offered to pay her, give her a position in the Senate if she was willing to admit or claim that Maduro had won the election. And she said no. She said, I am here to end the corruption, not to become a part of it. So she stayed to fight. And finally, a few minutes after midnight, the CNE committee came out and they announced that Maduro had won with 51% of the votes. And there are videos of people in the streets waiting to hear the results. And they start crying because they know it's not true. They know they've been lied to. They know they've been cheated. They know their freedom has been stolen from them again. And shortly after that, of course, Maduro made a speech congratulating himself and his party. But then after that, Maria Corina and Edmundo Gonzalez also made speeches. They got in front of everyone and said, "We know that we have won the election. We have proof. We're going to publish it to the world. The whole world knows that we've won the election. We're going to show proof that Maduro is committing a crime against the people, taking away their freedom, um, and oppressing the people." One of the things that Maria Corina had set up, I think I mentioned earlier, was a website that was recording electronically every vote as people put it in the machines, so that she could keep track, so that there was a record, a public record on the internet of what people actually voted for. Um, Maduro is now trying to claim that that website is fraudulent and that it was made up and that it's not true. Um, but it does agree with what all of the local polls announced when they made their tally, which is that Maria Corina had more than 73% of the votes from the people nationwide. Um, so the people have been in the streets protesting that their freedom has been taken away. One of the things that Maduro has done is try to shut down the internet and shut down electricity in certain locations to prevent people from posting online about what's been going on. Um, he hasn't successfully shut down the internet in the whole country, so the word is getting out slowly. But he's trying to suppress people from reaching out to the world and tell the world what's going on. There's still very little in English. Most of it's all in Spanish. That's why I'm here making this video today, is I want the word to get out in English to the English-speaking community. People have been protesting in the streets, and Maduro has sent his colectivos to intimidate them by shooting in the air, by riding at them with their motorcycles. He's also sent police shooting at people with rubber bullets and with tear gas. And it has started to get a bit violent. As of yesterday, they've recorded at least 11 people have been killed in the streets. The colectivos have a bit more freedom to shoot the people with live rounds, because that liability does not go back on the government. But what has happened is the banditos, the regular thieves and robbers and criminals, have risen up. And they said, "This is our country too. We want freedom too. We're going to take our guns and we're going to defend the voters in the streets from the colectivos, from the police, from the army. We're going to start shooting back because we also want freedom in this country." And this is the first time ever that there has been so much unity in the country. People are uniting for freedom. And looting has been strongly discouraged as riots have been occurring, and there have been a few people going and looting businesses. The Other protesters have chased those people down and beaten them, and the things they've stolen have been taken away from them. To end the looting, they said, "We are not here for our own gain, for money, or for looting. We are here to win our freedom." So this is the first time the country has been so united in trying to gain their freedom, and I hope they receive it. Um, in English speaking news, I've seen the United States and United Nations are trying to decide whether or not to get involved. Um, my hope is that they do get involved. My hope even more is that they don't need to, is that the people of Venezuela earn their freedom themselves, with the banditos fighting for them, with the people protesting in the streets, that they can overcome the communist regime of Maduro that was started by Hugo Chavez. Um, there's also videos of some police and some military standing in line against protesters, and they take off their uniform and say, "No, I am with the people. I also want freedom for this country." It's something we've never seen before in the world, and it's encouraging to see the people so united. So my hope is that this information will get out there to the English-speaking world. They will see what's going on. They will get involved. I hope that you will get involved, that you will reach out to your local government to make them aware. You will tell them what's going on, and you will seek for them to get involved and to help the people of Venezuela to win their freedom. Shalom.